Welcome back to the Science Fictionary Podcast. This is the first time we've been here on YouTube in a while.
It's true.
David, it's good to have you back.
Yes, I haven't been
Yep.
here much lately. I'm
Yeah,
here
it's
and
exciting.
David is here. It's like,
Yeah, we're finally getting
good old
things up and running again. Finally, it's summer schedule. It's just been a little weird, and then people got hit with hurricanes, and
I've been working nights and it's just been a lot.
yeah.
Yep.
But we're finally going to sit down and talk a little Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Ring. And if you haven't seen it and don't want to be spoiled, it's been a week. We're gonna
Go somewhere else
we're
if you
gonna
don't want to be
we're
spoiled.
gonna talk. We probably
Come back.
won't like go. I don't know. I don't want to say we won't go heavy spoiler because we may. I'm not sure where this is going, but spoilers ahead. So if you don't want to be spoiled, turn around now. There's other videos you can go check out on the YouTube channel, or you can find the Science Fictionary Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. But David, I know you're super excited to talk about this. What did you think? Because I know you were.
Yeah.
This was one that you really didn't care about when it was announced
Yeah.
and leading up to it.
Yeah, so going into it, even as a comic book fan, I didn't care much for Shang-Chi. He's really not a popular character, straight up.
Right.
And I still believe in my heart that the truth is, if Marvel had the X-Men and Fantastic Four before Endgame, they probably wouldn't have made a Shang-Chi movie, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, I'm very, very happy they did because this is one of my favorite Marvel movies that I have seen in a very long time. It's easily like in my top 10. The more and more I think about it, the more I love it. I thought it was a fantastic movie. I loved pretty much everything about it. I'm very glad it exists. It makes me excited for things like Eternals that I might have also been kind of iffy on.
Right.
It's just a really freaking cool movie. So much fun. It's one of those movies that, like, if I meet somebody who is just getting into superheroes and comic books, superhero movies, I'm going to recommend they watch this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it had a little bit of it kind of had a little bit of a phase one, Marvel phase one flavor to it, where it was kind of the simpler. It's not tied to all these other things yet. It's we're just able to go tell this one person's story without the weight of all the other stuff.
And it was that classic, we'll give you a stinger at the end, you know.
Yeah, we're back to that, but
We'll
just
give you
kind
some
of
tie-ins, you know, in a post-credit scene, but the whole movie wasn't like, wait a second, who is that person? Where did we see him?
But no, the movie was a blast. I mean, it was everything I think I hoped that it would be. It's a lot of fun. I'm seeing most people seem to really be enjoying this movie, and like you said, I'm really excited. I'm excited to see people getting excited about this movie because ever since Endgame came out, people have just kind of been on the fence about what was going to happen to Marvel. Like, is that the end? Like, can Marvel replicate what they did over the last 12 years? Can they do it again? And I think that was fair because what they had done was so unprecedented that I think it was fair to wonder, like, what do you do after something that big?
Yeah.
But I think people being excited about this will help people get excited about other projects like the Eternals moving forward. And now my hopes for the Eternals are just that much higher.
Yeah.
But Merisha, what did you think about the movie?
I thought it was great. I didn't really have... I didn't have many expectations for the movie going in. Like, the trailers looked really good, and it's a Marvel movie, so I hoped for good things. I was generally optimistic, but I don't have any opinions about how it should or shouldn't be necessarily, except for I wanted to see some really great action scenes. And it definitely delivered. I feel like it's a little ironic because I really actually enjoyed Mulan, and I actually do like the most, two recent Star Wars movies, but I always wind up comparing things to them. Like, see, if only Last Jedi had done this, like this movie did, it would be so much better. And I feel like this movie kind of did what I was hoping that Mulan was going to do, and just have, tell a good story and have lots of just really impressive action in places that made sense. And I feel like they did a really good job kind of balancing. It wasn't so much a martial arts flick that it didn't resonate with American audiences. It wasn't like going and watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but it still had enough of that vibe to really kind of pull you into the aesthetic of the movie, instead of just having like a couple of like, okay, well, here's our token moments, where we do our Asian thing and then we carry on with our completely unrelated story.
Yeah.
So I thought they did a really nice job with that.
I mean, what did y'all think? Let's just kind of go through each character. I mean, of course, Simu, let's talk about Simu Liu at the front there leading this movie. He had never done a whole lot. He had done Kim's Convenience. Prior to that, not much.
No?
And there was a lot of question as to whether or not he could hold his own as a leading man. And they did put him on the thing is, the cast is phenomenal. I think everybody in this movie did a great job, but he was, you put him on screen with a lot of great actors. And
A lot of really legendary actors. I mean, Michelle Yeoh is one of the most iconic actors of her generation.
right. So how did y'all feel about Simu as a leading man?
Nailed it. I think he was.
Yep.
I think he delivered on everything that he needed to deliver on, and then some.
Yep.
I think he's a star after this. I could
I do
definitely
too. I
see
think
him as like a leading.
I mean, I think that's what he is now. I mean, I think that his trajectory just totally changed, and he is, I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of Simu Liu going forward.
And he hit all the notes that he needed to hit. He was funny, but he also did the gravitas. I mean, because
But he never fades to the background when he's on screen with these.
No,
other
when he's on there, he's a commanding presence, and that's something that just everybody doesn't have. Everybody doesn't have the ability to just command the attention. And some of that obviously is good camera work, good costuming, good lots of things. But you also can't discount the actor just being able to, really hit all the right notes and do all the right things to make his character engaging. And he absolutely did that.
Yeah.
And he wasn't, but he also wasn't a joke. Like he kind of has his funny moments, but he also, he's got a fairly traumatic backstory, and I think that he sold that as well.
I mean, that was one of the great things about this one, is that it really sold the whole family story, that they really did well. What's that, David?
They did do it very well. The family story, the sort of, or the John Campea called it like a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah.
I think that's what he was referring to, as the family aspect of it.
Yeah. No, it definitely hits all those notes. And they did a fantastic job with that. And Simu did a great job, and I think we're fixing to start seeing his name all over the place.
I think so.
But moving from there, Aquafina.
I'm not gonna lie, that was probably the name on this cast that I was the least excited about. I was like, yay.
Yeah.
And she kind of played herself.
Yeah, but
it worked.
Did it well, and it worked. It worked with the story. It didn't. Sometimes characters like that, they just get to be a little much.
But the thing is she was there for a lot of the humor. But she did a wonderful job and it's not just her, it's the directing and the writing. They turned it off when it needed to be turned off, They turned it off. You didn't have jokes stepping all over serious moments. That's my biggest gripe about Guardians 2, is that they had jokes stepping all over what should have been like really heartfelt moments,
Yeah.
and they'd step on it with a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
And she did a fantastic job with that of pulling that back and being serious when she needed to be serious. And
Yeah, and I loved that. And that was something that whenever I was in the theater watching it, I noticed, oh, she's not saying something quippy. That's really nice. Thanks. Like, the big problem I have with a lot of Marvel movies is there's the quippy side character who's sassy and cute and quirky, and she has something to say about everything, you know? Like that's why I don't like Darcy from the Thor films.
right, right.
I thought, and when I saw her, and at first I was like, she's gonna be a Darcy. She's gonna be like, every time anything happens, she's got something quippy to say. But no, she was very funny. I think almost all of the jokes in this movie hit for me. Like, I
think
thought it
so.
was hilarious. I was laughing out loud in the theater. And a lot of that was her, but in very serious moments, and even just not serious moments, like, she only made jokes when it was necessary. She wasn't unnecessarily always having something to say. You know what I mean? And the serious moments where she had to act, she pulled it off very well. I totally bought her and Shang-Chi's friendship. They had a lot of chemistry together. I really do see them as best friends. I love that relationship. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie was their relationship. And I think she did a great job. I was very happy with it. I thought I was going to hate her at first. Even like with the first scene, I'm like, I'm going to hate her so much. By the end of the movie, I was like fully on board with her.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's right, Wong. You better take her with you. Like, there comes the spoilers.
But
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, sometimes when you have that quippy sidekick, they don't get a character arc.
And they don't do anything except stand around and make jokes.
Right.
And
Well, it's like Louise.
Yes.
You know, and I love Louise. Louise is a fantastic
Yeah.
character, but Louise has no real character arc. But this character, this side character, gets her own character arc through this story, and you get to see her grow a little as well.
So now we need a Louise Disney Plus show,
Yeah.
right? Where we get to see
I'm
Louise
still
do,
all I
like,
want
actually
them to
have a
do is
character
like
arc and a story.
I just need Louise like recounting the entire story of of the first three phases.
I mean, I think that's reasonable.
Louise. Somebody was joking that Louise should have been the Watcher. It should have been Louise, narrating the what if stuff. You know,
Yeah.
telling the stories. It was like that. It's like that would have ruined the show, but it would be hysterical.
Yeah. That's fun. But yeah, I agree. And she also was important just to Shang-Chi's she's kind of his emotional like plumb line in a lot of ways. She's sort
Yeah.
of his
No, she's
the normal thing in his life.
She's the Sam to his Frodo.
Yes. And everybody needs one of those. Especially those of us who tend to be a little bit drama. Not that I ever
she
tend
did
to
a
be
great job.
drama.
I really regret, she was one of the actors that did stuff down at the little theater to raise money down there here in town.
Oh yeah, she
when
was
they were making that movie.
She was in that movie. That
She was
I
in the
did.
last
I
movie you
never
did.
met her though.
And now I'm like, man, should have gone down there and like met people.
Yeah.
So moving forward, and some of these I'm just not going to try the names because I know how to pronounce Simu's name.
Because he
Some
told
of
us on
these
Twitter.
I would butcher, and I'm just not even going to try. But Shang-Chi's father in this film, and I can't say his.
Fantastic character.
Yeah, no, I love the character.
Not the Mandarin.
Not the Mandarin. It's weird to me that some of the places, and I guess it was to throw people off, leading into exactly how they were going to handle it. But some of the places like IMDb, like if you go look, it says the Mandarin next to his name. But I love that they were like totally just made fun of the whole Mandarin thing altogether. Like, he's not the Mandarin. Like, that was like this fake version someone made up, didn't know who he really was, made up this fake version of him. And and terrified the world. And can you imagine people scared of a chicken dish?
Right.
You know, it's
Well, and I think they addressed a lot of the issues that people kind of had.
I think they did a great job of addressing the issues. There were issues with this comic. I mean, there's no doubt about that. This comic is older, and it was written in an era when people in this country viewed people in Asian countries differently.
Yeah.
And
And it's
so,
probably it's got definitely got its problematic aspects.
and the character, because I mean, this is a kind of a new character created to be the father here. This is not the Mandarin. It's not Fu Manchu. It's
Yeah.
a new character. And that, of course, that was the problem. In the original, his father's Fu Manchu, and you've got all these tropes that just wouldn't fly today. And
No, and
and I
shouldn't.
think they did a wonderful job of creating new story around this character, because they kind of took really what they did. There's very little comic book here, best I can tell. It's a basic framework, and then they took this existing character and created a whole new story around him.
Pretty
Would
much.
you
from
say
my
that's accurate?
understanding. Yeah, I know
But
that like the 10 rings in the movie is nothing like what the 10 rings are in the comic books. I know that
right,
um the man obviously not Mandarin is not a thing in the comic books. It's all made up, but I think that's fine. It works really well.
yeah,
And it's not like Shang-Chi had this huge cast of characters that needed to be brought over.
right,
It's not like he had a character that was like super essential to him. Like how Daredevil has Foggy Nelson. Shang-Chi didn't really
Hmm.
have that. Like you can't make a Daredevil movie without Foggy Nelson. But Shang-Chi doesn't really have that problem. And
yeah.
Hmm.
I love the sort of original story that they came up with. And yeah, the I don't know, I can't say his name. I'm saying Shang-Chi's father. I'm just gonna call him the father. The father was fantastic character and one of my favorite villains in all of the MCU of any superhero movie. I think he's like top tier villain.
Yeah,
I think his arc from beginning to end was super relatable, super interesting, and heartbreaking, and
Hmm.
just a wonderful story that was told. And I'm almost glad that his story came to an end in this movie because it's like this perfect little
Hmm.
it's this perfect little capsule of like, look at this great story. All right, that's over. Have him coming back, showing up or whatever. It's over. And usually I hate that Marvel kills their villain. I hate it. It's so annoying. But for this case, I
right.
think it
Hmm.
made sense.
I think
That
in this case it made a lot of
and he sort
sense.
of defeated himself, which I think was
Right,
really interesting.
right.
Yeah. And I like how he defeated himself. I like the whole rounded story there. And at the end, I
Well,
almost
his
got this sense that yes, Shang-Chi kind of took over the rings for himself with his own power, but I kind of got this sense almost that like the father relinquished them to him almost.
no, that's exactly what I took from that. That at
Um,
the end, before he died, that he relinquished the control of the rings to his son.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the things that was very Shakespearean about this whole story is that before he dies, he kind of realizes that he's gone mad.
yeah, tragic
Hmm.
because he was. It sounds like his story was he was a guy who was an evil person
Yep.
from the sounds
Yeah,
of it. We didn't get super exact details, but he was an evil person and he changed. He was redeemed. He stopped for years. As long
Right.
as up until the point where Shang-Chi's mother died, he was just a dude having a family. And that was
yeah,
Right.
it. And that doesn't make up for everything that he did, but he was done with that life. And he got brought back into it by this tragedy. And I don't think Mandarin's arc is very similar to Killmonger. I think Killmonger is the most overrated villain in the entire freaking MCU. But um, by the end, like but by the time his wife died, he was like just a family man. And that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and it spirals him back, and then he's being corrupted by these demons. Basically, it's really like almost not his fault.
Yeah.
And you think about like what would you do in that situation where you're convinced, Andrew, you are convinced that behind that wall is Merisha screaming for help. Like you're gonna break down that wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No, I
so
mean
it was
the
it
whole
was
thing
a great
is
story.
very tragic, and it's a really interesting story. It's very Shakespearean in a lot of ways. I was also kind of thinking about the way that plays out and sort of that tragedy, because the other writer that writes really wonderful that people don't talk about that much as far as writing tragic characters, but in the fantasy genre is Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
That whole trope. I mean, it was
Especially you get that a lot more in the Silmarillion than in just the Lord of the Rings.
yes, yeah.
The
You
Lord
don't
of
get
the
a
Rings
lot of it,
isn't a
but some of the other
tragedy.
stuff, Baron and Luthien,
The
and
Children
some
of
of
Huron, jeez,
yeah, there's
Pete.
some seriously tragic
Yeah.
characters, and this kind of reminded me of some of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that character's fantastic. I mean, there's really not anybody. How did y'all feel about the way that they used Ben Kingsley?
Oh my gosh, he was so great. He was great. I love Ben
That was
Kingsley.
awesome because there were rumors that he was going to be in it, but honestly, I kind of forgotten about that.
I thought
I kind of just let
I
it slip
saw
my
him on the
mind,
red carpet.
and
I saw him at the red carpet in the cast photos, but I was like, oh, he's going to be in it for like 2 or 3 minutes, and that'll just like a nod to what
yeah,
happened, and that'll be it.
yeah, exactly. And then he shows up, and I'm like, oh, that's right, he's totally in this, right? Okay, cool. All right, well, okay, so he gave him where to go, so he'll stay in the dungeon, and we won't see him again.
Mhm.
And then he went with them. He shows up
Yeah.
in the car, and we ride in the front, and sick in the back. So funny. And then I'm like, okay, so he's right. And then he just keeps showing up. He just
Hmm.
stays. And then even towards the end, he's making jokes like he's still there the whole time. He's in it for a significant amount of the movie,
Yeah, he
Yeah.
really is.
and that was a really pleasant surprise. That was really really fun. I liked that a lot.
Well, and of course,
That was
Ben
great.
Kingsley
I thought it was
contributes to
great.
the Shakespearean ambiance of anything he's in, right?
Right.
He's
But it's
like
such
the
a
Yeah,
it's
Shakespeare
such
king.
a
he does. He
departure.
breaks into
Yes.
Macbeth.
Yeah.
Yes, and he always does like these real, badass scowling
Well, like
characters.
just surly characters,
Yeah.
and doing this is such a different thing for him, and I love it.
It's excellent.
Trevor Slattery is going to be one of a lot of people's favorite MCU characters now. As everybody hated it in Iron Man 3, and
Okay, now he was always a trip in Iron Man
he
3.
was.
You
I
may
think
not have
people
liked.
hated what they did with the character.
Yes.
His character was always hilarious in Iron Man 3. Like that moment in Iron Man 3 where he breaks character from the Mandarin. It's like, wait a minute.
It's like you are so high right now. Yeah. But the thing is, he was still, best thing to ever happen to me, mate. Got myself all cleaned up, and then I got kidnapped again. It's just like, oh my gosh, just so epic.
All right. So what about the sister? What are you expecting? I mean, clearly she and we should have been tipped off to this. We get the end credit scene. She's now in control of the Ten Ring.
Yeah.
And
I
she
don't
said
trust her.
early on, I don't trust her either. Well, she said early on in the movie, when he goes and finds her, and he's like, "You're running this whole thing," and
I sh-
and she's like, "Well, he wouldn't give me his empire, so I created my own." It's like, okay, so like she's gonna be
Yeah.
much more like the father than the mother, and
Yeah.
She, I think she's basically going to be the Mandarin.
I think, yeah. I think that she is going to be like a straight up villain going forward.
Yeah. Something I noticed at the end of the movie, usually they have like at the end of all the post credit scenes they'll have a thing that's like Captain America will return, Iron Man will return. At the end of this movie, it didn't say Shang-Chi will return. It said the Ten
yeah,
Rings will return.
yeah.
Hmm.
That really stuck out to me because what does that mean? The physical 10 rings themselves, or does it mean the
Right.
organization of the 10 rings? Because that came right after that second post-credit scene with the 10 rings um, training and getting up again. So I mean, it probably refers to both. But that I was like, oh crap, okay, so she's the villain of Shang-Chi too,
Probably so. That's my assumption.
which I think is awesome. That's a great development.
I mean, because she only has limited amount of use for him. Like, you left me, so like you can take a long hike on a short pier. Is basically the attitude she's got to him.
Right.
And I think that especially as they continue to choose really different paths, I think that is just going to be compounded.
Well, so at the end of this movie, Wong comes and tracks them down. He wants to, he wants to, he's the librarian. He's the keeper of these artifacts. He wants to figure out what these rings are, and he can't. And they even, he's got his team of people who are experts in alien technology and Earth technology, and they don't know what it is, and it's
Yeah,
giving off a signal once he was wearing the rings, like once they were coded to him, it began emitting a signal. Do y'all have any thoughts, theories?
I mean, are they giving a
so
signal that is going to be the
Because they're
deviants?
clearly not doing exactly the comics. So in the comics, the rings, like Fing Fang Foom, which we didn't give a name to the
yeah,
dragon in this movie, but in the comics, Fing Fang Foom is an alien race that just looked like what we would call a dragon.
Okay.
His ship crashed on Earth some long time in the past. The rings are part of the technology of that race.
Okay.
So it's all connected, but it
yeah.
doesn't seem to me they're going that direction. I mean, we've got some interesting stuff going on with just the fact that I think we might have got our first pocket dimension, which is something they do occasionally in the comics. Like Olympus is a pocket dimension,
That village.
and I think we got our first pocket dimension. It's this place that exists outside of our
That
world,
makes sense.
and but what are y'all's thoughts as far as what the signal from the rings means?
So first of all, super cool post-credit scene. I did not expect in my wildest dreams for Captain Marvel to show up in the post-credit scene of this movie. That was
Yeah,
super cool. Same with Bruce Banner, which also, whoa, he's not the Hulk anymore. He's
right.
just old man Mark Ruffalo. Arm still in a sling. That's interesting. That's cool. I kind of like that because I don't like the Professor Hulk character personally.
Right.
Um, so that's cool. Captain Marvel there, Wong's there. It's like this little. It's like the. And I like it because it's like, oh look, the Avengers are still around. Like they might not be officially by name the Avengers, but there are still people who are working together to protect the world. And
And
I
this
thought
is
that was
really our
super cool.
first, right? Because this is really our first hint of it after Endgame.
Yeah. Firsthand, and it's like basically what Black Widow was doing. They are continuing.
Right.
Black Widow was doing an Endgame with like the Council, and I think
Right.
that's super cool. Um, I think the ring you saw it's literally sending out a pulse, like a transmission. It is like sending a signal to something. One, it could be alien. It could be from Fing Fang Foom's planet. Captain Marvel. All Captain Marvel said was that it wasn't anything she's seen before. Like
Right.
it's not Kree, it's not Skrull, but I don't know what it is. So it could be that. Or I'm thinking it might be Celestial. Could relate to the Eternals in some way.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
I mean, it could potentially be something to do with the deviants getting loose, right? There's some sort of event that triggers the deviants or something. And there's what is it they're saying in
They
the
called it the
trailer?
Emerging, I think.
The
The emergence.
emergence. Yeah.
Emergence, yeah.
So what has emerged? Is the dragon emerged again? Has the
Right. I
I,
don't
I'm
know.
the emergence that they're referring to is going to mean most likely one of two things. It's either the emergence of the deviants. The deviants are back. That's why they're back. Or the other theory I've seen kind of postulated that actually seems to work is going back to the whole thing with the Celestials experimenting on humans, a latent gene that could be the X gene. So the emergence being the emergence of that latent gene within the human race.
Right.
And those are the two things that I think make sense for the emergence.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I think it probably just refers to the deviants, but I don't know. I just thought the rings might have something to do with that. You know, Eternals are coming up real soon. Um, I don't know.
When?
I'm thinking probably
November?
Celestial. It looks like Celestials are going to be a big part of whatever's going on in the next phase of the MCU.
Yeah.
And now those demons also seemed very like aesthetically really similar to the deviants that we saw in the trailer for the Eternals too. I wonder if they're in some way related.
I mean, they didn't tell us where.
Of course.
Did they tell us exactly where that creature came from?
I don't think so.
Because that could have, I mean, maybe that was.
They didn't really explain anything about that wall.
Although it would also beg the question, why didn't the Eternals?
Well, if they woke it up, the
interfere?
Eternals wouldn't have had time to have gotten there.
That's true.
So because I mean, it was just a quick battle, like it's loose and then it's dead.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that was our first look at a deviant.
Maybe because I was thinking that they did not explain what those were or where they came from.
Well, maybe that's what the signal is actually to the Eternals.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Maybe it's a
Yeah.
signal that the deviants are waking up. So I don't know. I mean,
Maybe.
that's
I don't
all.
know.
That's all like a huge out there guess, only because that thing kind of matches up with what I think the deviants are.
Yeah. Or it could have nothing to do with that. Like, we don't know.
It may have absolutely nothing to do with that. So talking about the rings, what?
Oh yeah, Nick had some interesting things to say about the rings.
Yeah, let's see.
Let's see about about the magic changing color and yeah, because I did notice it's like, I mean, obviously there's just sort of a like an aesthetic reason for them to change colors when they go from the dad to this like, oh, bad guy, good guy. But on the
Like-
other hand, you have to have an in-universe reason for that.
Right. Yeah, it's nice to have it visually so you can tell who's controlling what.
Right.
But it's also there has to be some sort of in-universe reason for why. Why did they change color?
And why did this signal just now activate? You know, the father's been using those things for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, now he's dead, so we can't find out where they came from, which is a shame. I guess they'll just get around to that eventually.
But that was kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about was the rings themselves. And I wanted to specifically ask David because he's more familiar with them in the comics. This is a very different, sort of simplified version. Not only are they not worn on the fingers, they're worn like more like bracelets. And I saw some people didn't like that, but it's still a ring. It's still technically a ring.
It is
But
a
it's-
circle.
It is a circle.
I didn't even think ring like jewelry. I thought
But in
ring
the
like
comics,
it's a ring.
they're jewelry. They're
Okay.
rings.
They're
on the
literally like
fingers.
rings.
And
Okay.
but the thing is, in the comics, each ring has its own unique power.
They're the Infinity,
Yeah, it's basically the Infinity Stone.
basically.
So
Which is why I understand why they changed it.
yeah, that was kind of my thought. Like,
We don't have
didn't we
Infinity
just
Stones
do
Part
that?
2.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Nick says they also have a
And that was
fraction.
actually Nick's next point, was
Yeah.
that they only had a fraction of the power. And I think they're still very powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe we will see more powers. We'll see him learning new things about the rings as we go.
Like, I wonder,
Yeah.
I doubt we've seen the rings at full power at this point.
and I feel like maybe the dad has been using them for something other than their original intention. You know, you kind of see that trope in fantasy a lot. It's like, well, it doesn't really it's only so useful because you're using it wrong. Like it's not actually a
You're somewhat
weapon; it's actually a
corrupting what
power
it's
source.
corrupting its intention.
Like
Its
so it's
intent.
only so good as a bomb because it's really intended to replace the sun on or just whatever kind of the story is. But
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think we all
Yeah.
agree with you,
I
Nick. I
think
think they toned them down because they're just way too much like the Infinity Stones in their original.
iteration.
Yeah. What was that, David?
yeah, and I really like the way they did the Ten Rings. At first, I wasn't liking it. Um, it's your turn. Um, at first, I wasn't liking it. At the very beginning, when they were showing the father, my first thought was like, oh, so it's Whiplash from Iron Man 2. That kind of sucks. That's kind of stupid. This is dumb. He's just whipping them around. Like, that sucks. But as they went further into the movie and started doing more with them, I grew to really like them a lot as like a really cool weapon and power set to have. And especially like towards the end where it was like, how Shang-Chi, he just knows Kung Fu. How's he going to fight dragons? Well, he gets the rings and they kind of give him this extra power. And the way that Shang-Chi used them, especially, I really started to like because he sort of incorporated them just as part of his Kung Fu movie, right? As part of his body almost as an extension of himself, the way they were flowing around him. I just really like that a lot. So I really like the way the rings were used. I think they're really cool. I'd love to see them again. I think it's going to make sense to. I think it's going to be good, so it'll make sense of why Shang-Chi's hanging out with the Avengers,
Yeah.
with Captain Marvel, because he is going to be really powerful with those rings. And yeah, I think they're just too similar to the Infinity Stones. I don't want to see another 3 phases about them tracking down the 10 rings when they're all together. They're so powerful. Like I
Right.
think this
Yeah.
was just a different interpretation. I think it was really cool, and I
Mm-hmm.
really like the way they were used. And the more I think about it, that's really freaking cool. Like I'd love to punch something way over there, and it's like a slinky on my arm, like I'm sending at somebody. Like I
Right.
guarantee there are going to be kids that have slinkies on their arms, running around, throwing them around like it's
Yep.
the 10 rings. So I thought it was really cool.
Absolutely.
I really liked it, and I don't care that they changed the way the 10 rings work in the comics because we don't. As we keep saying it, they're so similar to the Infinity Stones that it really kind of would have been boring. It would have
And
been
this is honestly
um,
way more visually interesting.
repetitive. It is more visually interesting. I like the way the powers were used a lot, especially as they started doing more and more with them.
Yeah. All right. So, two more big things I want to cover kind of before we wrap up. One is the action sequences. I mean, what did y'all think about that? I mean, because we were told we're getting this martial arts epic. I think the fighting was exactly what I want in
Mm-hmm.
that type of movie. I got a lot of look at it. I could see it. It wasn't the up close. It wasn't choppy. Like I'm actually getting to watch the fight choreography, which is
Yep.
what I really want in this kind of movie. I love how much they leaned into the style of Jackie Chan for a lot of Simu Liu's fights, especially that bus scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the jacket and the kind of
Yeah.
Very, very
The
Jackie
way they're
Chan.
using the environment.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very kung fu.
yeah. But a lot of times, and we've talked about this recently with some other things. GI Joe was real guilty of it recently. The Black Widow movie was guilty of it a little bit with getting in too close, and you can't actually really see the action happening. And I thought they did a good job with pulling back and letting
Yeah.
these people show off what they got.
Yep.
And I
Yeah.
think
Let the
sometimes
action
that's the difference
breathe.
between, do you actually have people who know how to fight doing the choreography, or do you not? And sometimes I feel like it's when they pull in too close, it's because the fighting really wasn't that good, so
Mm-hmm.
you just minimize what you're showing to make it look better.
And get
Yeah.
you
And when
some
it's
nice
really good, you
silhouettes.
can pull back and
Yeah.
show it off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I loved the action in this, but I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to hear what y'all had to say about it.
I loved it. I loved the use of long shots throughout the movie, especially in the action
Yeah.
scenes. There were a lot of long tracking shots where you could
Hmm.
really watch the fight play out. I can't wait to watch those again. Um, Towards the beginning, with the bus scene, I noticed that some of the CGI wasn't looking the prettiest. It didn't look very finished. Maybe that was just me, but a lot of the bus stuff, it just didn't look great. But then I saw later in the movie, oh, because all of the budget went to the freaking awesome looking dragons that were fighting. Um,
All right.
but other than that, I thought the actual action itself was great. Going into it, I kind of expected a movie that was like 2 hours of the Ronin scene from Endgame. That
Hmm.
was the kind of action I was expecting,
Yeah.
and I'd still like to see something like that. But you know what? We can do that like in a Daredevil movie, maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It would maybe fit that more because with Shang-Chi, they chose there were really two sides they could go. They could go the super street fighter heavy side of it, like just down and dirty in the alleyways, no
Mm-hmm.
magic or just punching people in the face, kung fu side of it, or they could go the really mystical side of it, and they went the really mystical side. So, with that being said, there was no need for these like really gritty fight
Yeah. Yeah.
scenes like we got with Ronin, and that's
I'm good
okay.
with that.
And I
Like,
think I liked what they ended up doing with them.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I agree. The really mystical stuff like Shang-Chi, if they decide ever to do Iron Fist again, go the mystical route. And if you want to go down and dirty, let's do more Daredevil.
Yeah, um,
Yeah.
and so I was really happy with it. I loved the pacing of the fight scenes and the progression of them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Something I noticed and that I really felt was so when you look at the movie like from a wide angle, at the beginning he's fighting on a bus, and at the end he's flying around on a dragon fighting another dragon. How do you get from one place to the other, right? But when you actually watch it, it paces itself really well. The build up to it, it's a great
Mm-hmm.
adventure movie. I think the
Hmm.
adventure
Yes.
in this is fantastic. It's one of my favorite adventure movies I've ever seen because it starts with like they're in this town, they're on the bus, they're fighting. Okay, so this is what's going on. There were stakes to the fight with the amulet. We established that Katie was a very good driver, so it made sense for her to be doing the bus thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy and it's a lot of fun, but nothing like super magical, right? And then it moves up
Mm-hmm.
to the next thing where you see they're in this fight ring, and now they're fighting on the scaffolding on the side of the building, which I thought was freaking awesome. That was a great place for a fight scene. A big problem the MCU has is they choose the weirdest locations for their fight scenes. Like in Captain America Civil War, the big final epic fight scene between Iron Man, Bucky, and Cap is just in this concrete room. That sucks. It's so boring. Well, with this, it's like a moving a bus, and they're on bamboo scaffolding on the side of a super tall building. That was so
In
freaking
Hong
clever and
Kong,
cool,
right?
and I loved
Yeah.
watching it.
Yeah.
It was so
So,
cool. And then
speaking
it
of fight scenes,
progresses, and they start
okay,
and they do more and more of these fights, and then it kind of makes sense of how they get to this. Is it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and by the time you
absolutely.
get to the end, you don't feel whiplash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It built
That's
up
a
to it
really
really
good
well,
point.
so I
Well,
love the fight scene.
and that was great because you're introducing us to something very new in the MCU
Mm-hmm.
with this very fantastical uh, place. Whether we find out later that it's some sort of pocket dimension or what is it exactly,
Mm-hmm.
but it's different. It's something new. It's something a little more outrageous for the even the MCU,
Mm-hmm.
and they walked us into it very slowly, and so it's not jarring. It's by the time you get there, you just accept it, and that kind of leads to the last thing I wanted to talk about, which was the
Yeah.
CGI specifically in relation to the creatures. I was worried that the big lions were going to look awful. Like when I first saw those in the first trailer, I went, "Oh, that's going to be real bad." I,
Anytime you try and make mythical creatures, bring them to life on CGI, it's always like,
they look so cool.
Like the centaurs in Harry Potter. No, not that. Yeah,
But
but
they
they
did.
looked
They looked
amazing.
really cool. Like, I don't want to mess with one of those things.
Yeah, no, no.
What did you think about that, David? Specifically, I mean, I guess we're talking the demons and the lead demon, the main one, the dragon, and the lions.
And not, no, you can't forget about Abomination. He was a creature, right?
Yeah,
We
that's a
didn't see
little
nearly as
earlier.
much of him as we
And,
thought we were
and
going
actually, I do
to.
want to touch on that. That's a really short thing. Uh oh, we lost David.
He'll be back.
Device is not connected.
David,
No, we lost David.
come back.
All right, well, David will be back. I guess we're on video, we're live, so we have to keep going without David until he comes back. Merisha, what did you think about all the CGI creatures?
I thought the CGI creatures were amazing. You know, anytime it's like we've got dragons, we've got, like I said, mythical creatures, people have opinions about how they want them to look.
Oh, hey.
Hey, he's back.
Apologies. Continue. I was actually able to listen to what y'all were saying while that was
Okay.
happening, so I'm caught up. Continue.
That's good. That's good. But I thought that it was like you said, you realize that it's like, okay, they spent all the money on the dragon and the demons, and it was completely convincing. You know, it's like for something to go from either artwork, ancient artwork, to something rendered in actual 3D that looks alive. And the demons, I feel like, are even more of an accomplishment because they're completely original creatures.
Right.
So it's always really impressive when you can get, and now the dragon was a lot more of a European style dragon than an Chinese style dragon. I was really expecting the dragon to look a little more. The head was
No
like
big
more like
wings.
the long and
It
smooth.
did, yeah, it didn't have the big. It wasn't like a
No.
wyvern or anything. Yeah, it was, and it was very colorful.
Yeah, but
and-
it wasn't quite like Chinese dragons usually have like
yeah, it doesn't
boxier
look like the very
heads,
traditional
and this
Chinese
one's got the
dragon
long
They're very
face, more the
snake-like.
face. Yeah.
either. Yeah.
It's a little more Smaug than I was envisioning, which is fine. I thought he looked great.
But that was the thing. Like, what did y'all think about the way it looks? Because I mean, anytime you go as far as to put things like that on screen, you're taking a huge risk. I mean, there was a lot of risk taken by Marvel in just doing this movie.
Absolutely.
And of course, Feige has never shied away from a risk.
Yeah.
They just take it and they throw the money at it to make it work. But it's you are taking a risk when you put these big CGI creatures on film. And David, what did you think about the look of everything?
I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. Um, from the creature that was Trevor's friend. What was the creature's name?
Oh, I don't know, that creepy little guy.
Yeah,
What?
The little pig man.
Morris.
Morris.
Morris. I
of
loved Morris.
course,
From
with
that,
no
I
head.
love the design. Like, what the frick? Morris was amazing. And then to the big, like the dog lion things. I don't know what they're called. That were in the village. Those
Yeah.
were freaking awesome. I absolutely loved those. And then the dragons looked amazing, and all the fantastic creatures. I love that one that stops in front of the car and is just staring at
Yeah.
him like it's a moose in the road. Just staring at him like that's gonna make for some great memes.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I think it looked beautiful. It was great. I loved the creature. I love the design. I love the aesthetic of the entire movie. Everything. I love the entire aesthetic. Everything from the costumes to the colors and the locations. Just everything about the movie aesthetically was
Yeah.
perfect in my opinion. I
Yeah.
loved it so much.
Yeah.
I think it's
Um,
probably one of the more, other than the stuff like Doctor Strange where they're going through these different dimensions of like fingers and stuff like that. Like other than the crazy stuff like that, this is up there as one of the most visually interesting MCU movies. It's up there next to like this and like Guardians of the Galaxy in my opinion.
Yeah.
was actually really cool to look at Marvel movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
I do like Nick's comparison though
yeah.
with the Narnia. It's like it's a lot of the same kind of stuff. It's just like if it were in China
Yeah.
instead, if if Tolkien were writing Chinese fantasy instead of European fantasy.
I would say that this takes what they did with something like Narnia and really builds on it well.
I
Because
mean,
overall, I
geez,
would say
Narnia
it's a
was
little
15
better
years
than
ago.
Narnia. But Narnia, how old is that first Narnia movie now?
Geez, 20 years old.
It's not 20, but it's
Almost,
up
it's at
there.
least 15 years old. I mean, okay, so Narnia came out the year we moved to Natchez. So 16 years?
Yeah. So,
It's been a little while.
so I think this does, because there are some in Narnia that I just don't think hold up real well. There are other things in the Narnia movies that
The
are
fawns are the centaurs. Ooh, the firebirds.
the fawns look amazing. The centaurs look amazing, and of course the griffins and the phoenixes are probably my two favorite creatures.
Yeah.
In there, the phoenixes, and I think the phoenix might be the closest comparison
Yeah.
to what they did in this with the creatures.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great comparison. I think that I think this actually compares really well to the Narnia stuff. I think just 15 years later. I think all the new bells and whistles that they can do when rendering this stuff really show. But I do think that I think the stuff looks good, and I think it's going to hold up really, really well.
Yep. I feel like it'll hold up in the same way that you watch Lord of the Rings now and you go, okay, it holds up.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I mean, maybe the cave troll looks a little
There are
video
there are
games.
things in Lord of the Rings, and some of that is just the computer power needed to render things in CGI just
Yep.
wasn't there back then.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that I think this will be one of those things, even the things that aren't perfect, it'll be like, I mean, but it still doesn't take you out of it. And I didn't feel like any of the CGI in this kind of took me out of the world they were building. And they did a great job creating that world.
Yeah.
Dave is getting sleepy.
All right, so
I'm a
couple
tired boy.
couple of small questions, and we're going to wrap up here. We're getting close to an hour.
Okay.
One of them is something I haven't seen anybody else touch on, and I want to know what y'all thought about it.
Okay.
Is Abomination and Wong leaving together after their fight?
Right. Like, what is Abomination like Wong's Groot or something? He just takes him
They
around
might have
and
been.
fights him?
They might have been throwing fights.
Yeah, well, I got
It
that
looks that
impression
way.
for sure that they were just like, there for the to put on a show. But like,
Yeah.
What a weird
that's
pairing.
a big change from the
How
last
did
time
we
we
get
saw
from the Abomination, like Tim Roth's Abomination, to this? I think it would have had to been like the poor dude was not able to transform back to his normal self, and he got kind of outcast and experimented on, and then General Ross like threw him away basically, and he was able to escape, and is now just making his way, like doing the best he
Yeah.
can. Or they might just we're probably never going to see Abomination again.
We're
But
supposed to see Abomination and She-Hulk, though.
oh yeah, that's right.
right.
That's cool. That's right. Yeah, no, I have no idea how he got here, but I think that was so much fun. I love that with like Wong. I
Yeah.
love the idea that like behind Doctor Strange's back, almost Wong is like living this entire other life
Yeah.
that like
I
Doctor
feel
Strange
like
has
they both
no
have
idea
that.
about.
They both think the other one's so uptight, and so they're like, I'm going to go do my sneaky thing. Ooh, don't let Wong find out, And I feel like
Right.
Wong's kind of doing the same thing, like, don't let Steven find out I'm throwing fights and
Yeah, no, I love-
underground fight ring.
I love them partying with Wong at the end of the
Yes.
at the end of the movie.
California, that was so funny. That was so, and I
Doing
love
karaoke.
the use of music in movies. And when it broke in, and like then the final song for the credits was Hotel California coming off of that karaoke,
Yeah.
just made me smile from ear to ear.
Yeah.
Like that
was
joke,
a
I
fun-
thought that joke was so stupid. I thought that joke was so stupid. Whenever Katie said that, she was like, "Yeah," and so I just started singing Hotel California to the bully. And I was like, "That's a really weird thing to say." Like, okay, and then like 30 minutes later, she does that to the ninja or whatever. It's like it cracked me up so much. And then they bring it all back around. Like, that is how you do a running gag, ladies and gentlemen. Is
Yes.
you bring it back at the end there, and then you just get to end on Hotel California after this wonderful adventure movie. You go on this epic journey that ends with some eagles,
Yeah.
which you
It's
can't
always
go
the best way.
wrong
Always
with
the best
doing
way to end an adventure
that.
story is with eagles. We
Yeah.
get to see, a little more of Benedict Wong's acting range too. 'Cause
Yeah, no, he's a fun character. Like the more Wong
I'm
shows
gonna
up,
listen to Eagles on my way to work tomorrow.
the more Wong shows up, the better. Like
Yeah.
he's a fantastic
it's
character to
it's
just
also
have
great
pop
that
in.
that's actually his last
Yeah,
name. It's like, no, for real. Even funnier is that there were two Benedicts working on
Incredible.
Doctor Strange. What if that's what Wong is doing in Spidey as he's running off to go to his fight club?
yeah. No, I want to know more about that. Like, I really, I don't know if they're going to
That's
follow
funny.
up with any of that or not. But like, I want to know what's up with. First of all, why is Wong going to the Fight Club? Because it
Yeah,
seems.
I want to see the Fight Club again. I think it's a great idea.
Oh no, that's a great thing. I hope we see that again for sure. But
Yeah,
here's
one thing I noticed was there was a guy in one of the fights who like had the extremis virus from Iron Man 3.
yeah.
I noticed that, and then I read on Twitter that so I didn't notice this myself, but people are saying that there was a Black Widow there.
That
That
would
one of
make
the Black Widows
sense.
was there. I didn't notice that
I
myself.
think
That's
there's a
what I'm
good
seeing.
chance that some of the women that wind up as part of the Ten Ring
Yeah,
at the end are going to be widows.
yeah,
It
that
makes
would
sense.
make sense.
So I'm very curious to see where they go with all of that. But down to the last question I've got for y'all for tonight. And you don't have to give me an exact ranking because ranking the MCU is extremely difficult.
Time
And
consuming.
I kind of have my own way of ranking it. I've never sat down. I'm planning on sometime here real soon sitting down and trying to rank the whole thing. Generally speaking, what I do when a movie first comes out, I don't really like to rank them till I've seen them more than once. But kind of the first question I always say, does it crack your top five? I don't think this one cracks my top five, but if I kind of rank Marvel into three tiers. I have the upper tier, which is like the best of the best. That's the first Iron Man. That's Winter Soldier. That's Endgame and Infinity War. It's if you don't break into my top five, like that doesn't mean anything because I think those top five movies. If you take the top five movies in the MCU, they're amazing. I kind of have a middle tier and a bottom tier, and most things kind of lump into the middle tier for me. But I would say that this kind of is up there, kind of in the upper side of my mid tier Marvel movies, alongside things like Black Panther, the Guardians movies, things like that. But I wanted to see kind of where y'all feel at this point where this one fits into your hierarchy of Marvel movies.
Well, I do have like an official list ranking my favorite Marvel movies, and so what I actually did, I looked at that list and I just started going down, and I was like, okay, is this better than this? Yes, 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 yes. And I got pretty far, and I got to my top five, and my number five is Iron Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked myself, do I like this better than Iron Man 3? And right now the answer is yes. So this is officially like my number five favorite MCU movie. Now after rewatching it, I might change around a little bit. Number four favorite MCU movie is Iron Man, and that's where I stopped. That's like okay, I cannot say after watching it one time that I like it
Yeah,
better than Iron Man. But
yeah.
uh, I am happy to put it above Iron Man 3. So it's my number five right now. That might change around. I might bump Iron Man 3 back up there, but it's top six or top five. Like I really loved it that much. It was a
Cool.
fantastic adventure movie that put a smile on my face from beginning to end.
Yeah, I tend to kind of feel this. I mean, I don't think I have a list.
You've never ranked them all.
I don't think I've ever ranked them all. If we haven't done them on here, then
No,
certainly
and we
haven't
need
done it
to.
just
We
for
actually
fun.
probably ought to do that and put our rankings on the website.
Yeah. But I mean, it's definitely, I think it'll be one of my most rewatchable Marvel movies. One that once it comes out, and we have it on digital. It's probably one kind of like Captain America, that I'm liable to just turn on just for fun.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said for it's a little more standalone. And I think that there is something that's a little more rewatchable about something that you don't have to like fit it into all the context mentally. It's a little bit less work. Like every once in a while, even still, as many times as I've seen Marvel movies, I'll go and I'll watch. I'm trying to remember which one I was watching recently. It was kind of a back. Oh, it was whenever WandaVision came out. I was watching Age of Ultron, and it was like, oh wait. Now I thought this person was the way. Where is this person? Trying to fit it into the timeline mentally, and this one doesn't have that issue. It's just kind of there by itself.
So, Nick, to answer your question, yes, I think if I remove the Avengers movies from my list, I would say that this is a top 5 Marvel origin film.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. Well, anybody have anything else they want to add about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Ring before we wrap up for the night?
Is Katie an Avenger now? Because Wong invited her too. And that was like great and fun. I liked that. But like, I think it'd be kind of weird if she showed up in an Avenger movie.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting to kind of ask the question of like, who's an Avenger and who's not, and how do you know when they are? Like, because Spider-Man for a long time wasn't. Mm-hmm. And then you get this really funny moment where Tony just kind of like knights him and goes, "Okay, you're an Avenger now." And but Bucky never considers himself one of the Avengers. Mm-hmm. And we in this last one of these latest or last week's What If, you kind of got Scott going, well, I'm kind of an Avenger. It's like, it's like, are you really an Avenger or not? Like,
or just Avenger adjacent.
Right. So
Avenger adjacent. That's a good way to put it. Marvel did officially call Shang-Chi their new Avenger. They were like, our first new Avenger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
On some post, they were like celebrating our newest Avenger. Which I think this means he'll be in the next Avengers movie. Sure.
Yeah. And of course, before we log off, what did y'all think about Kevin Feige's comments on that? Somebody asked him when we could expect the next Avengers movie, which I guess would be what, Avengers 5?
Mm-hmm.
And his answer was basically like, well, we're not talking about that yet. Like, we got to build up to that.
I'm okay with that.
And I guarantee he knows when he wants to do it. But because I think
it may already be made.
Because I think he plans like 10 years out.
Yeah.
I think that's why the MCU works, because he plans so far out. Mm-hmm. But I do love the fact that they're like, look, we're not going to rush and put another Avengers movie out, because I feel like that's what everybody that's kind of tried to follow the MCU has done. They've rushed way too fast into their team up movies, and it falls flat. And I think that's the biggest thing they have going is they're not going to do that until it's time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really excited for I believe in all my heart that the next Avengers movie is going to be called the Avengers.
You cut out. What do you think it's going?
Sam Wilson, Captain America.
You cut out for just a second.
I don't think it's coming out.
What did you think it's going to be called?
The New Avengers.
The New Avengers.
I think it'll be called The New Avengers. And I think it's going to be like Spider-Man, Shang-Chi, led by Sam Wilson, Captain America. Hulk's going to be like the, like the Nick Fury of it almost.
Yeah.
Hulk. And then you got Captain Marvel will probably be in it. It'll be like that. It'll be this pretty much brand new team. Maybe War Machine will show up in it. I don't know, but it's
that's one we haven't talked about in a while. But we do have that Armor Wars show coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And we're gonna do a new Iron Man with Riri Williams. They might do a Young Avengers movie where they have like Miss Marvel and Riri Williams, and even Spider-Man could lead. Spider-Man could lead the Young Avengers, so I think it would be another cool thing.
Yeah.
Yes, he's big enough to be an official Avenger, but he is in this timeline he's still just like a teenager.
Yeah.
So that'd be
Yeah,
cool.
it's going
And
to
I
be
could
real
see
interesting. I mean,
Shang-Chi be part of the Avengers.
they have definitely set up a ton of young characters, including the fact that they brought the kid from Iron Man 3 back for the funeral scene. I still don't think that was for nothing.
Yeah.
And it could have been, but like,
I have to see.
but like, why would you bring that one character back?
Right.
For the funeral
all
scene.
the characters he's interacted with over the years.
Right. But anyway, that's going to do it for us for tonight. David, where can people find you online?
You guys can find me on Twitter giving you life advice about bathroom breaks at work at David_JG.
Perfect.
Merisha?
You can find me on Instagram, princesses_and_Padawans, and I'm P Padawans on Twitter occasionally. Not very much, but occasionally.
All right. And you can find me running the Twitter account for this show at sci_fictionary. Like you see it there at the bottom of the screen. You can drop us a line at thesciencefictionary@gmail.com. And as always, you can find our show as well as the rest of the Red 5 Podcast Network at Red 5 Network on Twitter. And until next time, may the force be with you.
This podcast is part of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts, visit red5network.com.